Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Derek Judd with Cowboy Criminology. Of course, I am your host, the Cowboy Criminologist. Just wanted to share a short video with you. Woke up this morning, and this happened to be in my news feeds. And the way this case played out, I can't explain it. I was beyond mad. I was
spinning me into a dimension of pissed off I've never been in before in my life.
So here's what happened. So the headline of this story says, teen escapes after allegedly being held hostage for a week by a man in Big Bear, which is out in California. Really nice, pretty part of California too, if you like woods and mountains and stuff like that, which I do. So I want to share this video with you right quick.
A man living in the San Bernardino Mountains near Big Bear is accused of kidnapping and raping a teenage girl. Investigators say he held her against her will for days before she was finally able to get away and call for help.
KCAL News reporter Michelle Geely has the disturbing details.
Who are you?
Tell me about the girl who was held here.
No one wanted to comment at the suspect's home in Big Bear. It's where San Bernardino County Sheriff's deputies say a 26-year-old held a teenager for nearly a week, allegedly forcing her to drink large amounts of alcohol and sexually assaulting her. A neighbor told me he'd seen the suspect with a girl across the street.
And then I saw him here with a young girl a few days ago, and that's the last time I really saw him.
And what did you see?
I just saw him and her go into the side of the house and enter through the side.
And how did she appear to be?
She looked young, small. Hair was scraggly. She looked a mess.
A sheriff's spokesperson says the suspect kidnapped the teenager after picking her up March 1st near Big Bear Lake and then refused to let her out of the car when they got to her home. She was taken to his house, according to officials, where he asked her for sex. She refused and was then kept in the house, where deputies say she was forced to have sex with him in exchange for her freedom. 6 days later, according to sheriff's deputies, the teen had a chance to escape. According to a witness, she was in the suspect's car at his job at Jack in the Box in Big Bear Village, and she ran across the street for help.
She walked in and said that she was kidnapped.
Tori, who didn't want to give us her last name, tells me that she hid the frightened girl in the back room of her store until deputies got to her.
She didn't share much. She was extremely just frazzled. Like she wasn't talking too much. She wasn't sharing too much. But it is winter up in Big Bear, and she wasn't like adequately clothed, so you could kind of tell that something was off. So she wasn't sharing too much. She was pretty quiet. She just said, like, I was kidnapped.
The suspect was taken by officers as he came by the store looking for the teen. He was held in the Big Bear jail on suspicion of kidnapping, false imprisonment, and statutory rape, but has since bailed out of jail. In Big Bear, Michelle Geely, KCAL News.
So he's out on bond right now. Okay. Now let me explain something to you. Okay. He was charged with statutory rape and kidnapping. Okay. Statutory rape, because I looked this up because I wanted to make sure I was giving y'all the correct information. But under California Penal Code 261.5, statutory rape occurs in California when anyone has sexual intercourse with a person under 18. Okay. It doesn't appear that they have a Romeo and Juliet law in California, or at least not one that I was able to see. And it's either a misdemeanor or a felony, depending on, let's say, adult engages in unlawful sexual less than 2 years younger than the adult is liable for civil penalties, not criminal. Okay. She's 17. This guy's 25, 26. Okay. The problem is California, the great state that went through great lengths to enhance the Me Too movement and nail Harvey Weinstein to the wall for sexual assault and victimization of women trying to get their start in film and television. Nailed him to the wall. because he's a rapist. He's horrible. He's all of these things. This guy kidnaps a 17-year-old girl, refuses to let her, or refuses to take her home, takes her to his home, where he withholds food and water from her for 6 days until she finally has sex with him. And then he takes her to work, keeps her in a locked vehicle, because this is a criminal mastermind if there ever was. She gets out of the vehicle and immediately goes to another proprietor, tells her story. They call the cops, and thank goodness they showed up. But he's out on bond for statutory rape and kidnapping. So let me explain something. If rape happens in the context of a kidnapping, that is considered an aggravating factor. Okay? Once it was clear that she was not operating under her own free will, consent is out the window. If you are kidnapped, you can't consent. It doesn't matter. You can't plead Stockholm Syndrome or any other nonsense that some lawyer is going to try and cook up. She wanted to go home. He refused to take her home. He took her to his house and explained that he wanted to have sex with her. She said no. Right there. She's kidnapped. She knows what he wants, and she's not going to give it to him. His answer, I'm going to withhold food and water. Now, in California, if you did this to a pet, withheld food and water from a pet, they would bring back the death penalty and fast track you just so they can make an example of what a horrible human being you are. And yet, this guy's out on bond for kidnapping and statutory rape. Okay? Beyond that, she was given alcohol in order to entice her and lower her inhibitions, because from what the news story says, she thought that giving him was the only way that he would let her go, would take her home. Okay? When you ply somebody with alcohol, and once again, California was a leader in consent. No means no. And what does consent mean? The California was huge in that. And a lot of that stemmed from activities that were taking place at a lot of the college campuses in California. And date rape and things like this were coming up, and serious offenders were getting away with these horrible crimes, which should never have happened. Once again, this guy's out on bond for statutory rape and kidnapping. Statutory rape would imply that there was some kind of consent on the minor's part, that they knew the relationship was inappropriate, one thing or another, but they're in love or whatever. All right. That's statutory rape. Okay. When you establish that kidnapping occurred, consent goes out the window. It doesn't matter anything else that takes place after that. This individual has committed a felony. So I go a little further because, once again, I want to make sure I was giving you all the proper information. California Penal Code Section 24.3 specifically details aggravated sexual assault. And you want to know what one of those components is? Unlawfully restrained. That's where you keep somebody against their will in a given location, which we have that established. So I'm just trying to wrap my mind around how in the world this guy is out on bond right now, where he's free to make contact with his female victim. And I'm sure his bond says that he's not supposed to have any telephonic, electronic, or personal contact, written contact with the victim. And I'm sure he pinky swore that he wouldn't do that. If he is not wearing a GPS monitor, and I don't have a whole lot of faith in those either, but what's going to stop him? What's going to stop this offender from turning around and taking another victim, and instead of committing sexual assault or kidnapping, this time he decides he's not going to leave a witness to testify against him. Y'all, remember when I talked about, in a previous video, I had talked about if you want to fix the criminal justice system, if you really wanted to fix it, you'd take away prosecutorial and judicial immunity. This is a great case for that, because I would be very surprised. I'd be surprised to find out if this guy has an extensive criminal history. I wouldn't be surprised to find out that working at Jack in the Box the way he does at 25, he has probably had some success in offering drugs or money to some of the younger girls that he works with, and they come over and whatever. Obviously, he's not very criminally sophisticated because of the way he went about this. He stated what he wanted, but he didn't really know how to get what he wanted, and obviously he doesn't have enough confidence to be combative or assaultive. So he tries to withhold food. He plies her with alcohol in order to get compliance. I almost said consent there, and that's not the case. Compliance is what he was looking for. Okay, so above and beyond all that, he brings her to work in his vehicle, which, unless it has heavy modification, would be pretty easy for anybody to get out of, and which she did. And so I'm sitting here and I'm looking at all of this, and I'm thinking about all the things that can go wrong. And in my past videos, you've seen me talk about offenders who are out on parole, probation, or bond who have committed horrible acts, okay? And part of the biggest problem with the criminal justice system is criminals don't fear the criminal justice system anymore. And they don't fear it because they're oftentimes handled with kid gloves because it's their first offense. They misunderstood. Whatever the case is, there is nothing in this case right now, as it stands, that leads me to believe that this guy should be out right now. Y'all, I would appreciate your comments on this. I think this is a horrible case, and I pray that girl gets the help that she's going to need, because she's got a long road ahead of her. Y'all, this is Derek Judd with Cowboy Criminology. Y'all be safe. Have a great weekend.